I don't go to the devil to play the devil. I think many actors make that mistake. Go to God to tell you who the devil is. That's what I do. And it also gives me a protection.
What's the
Um,
difference? What's the difference, Jim? Like, because that also bears on how you protect yourself from such things.
um, and are you saying the difference in the difference is that I play the truth. So if you go to the devil to play the devil will deceive you and put something up there that deceives the public. He'll always try to hide in the shadow. He'll always try because he doesn't like the light, even though he's called the light, the illuminator, Lucifer. And he tries to mimic God. He tries to be like God. So there's always like if God has love and what we see as love, he creates lust.
Hey, I just wanted to quickly stop this video just to let you know that after this clip is done playing, we're going to talk about the power of imitation and to pay attention and to be careful about what that is we are representing. All right, let's keep going.
He creates lust. He's always trying to be like that. It's like Cain trying to rip off Abel, cutting the corners. And so committing to...
There's a tendency, even in Milton's, in Milton's Paradise Lost, there's been two readings of that forever. And one of them is that Milton's Satan is an anti-hero of the most profound sort, really the embodiment of evil. And the other reading is that Milton's Satan is a disguised hero and the eternal, what would you say, the eternal rebel against established order and someone to emulate in consequence, and that Milton somehow knew that and was coding that, not precisely secretly, but subtly. And I think that's a huge mistake. I mean, I've familiarized myself with Paradise Lost, and I think that Milton was an extraordinarily subtle writer and that he got everything as right as anyone ever has. But the reason I'm bringing that up is because, so this is a complicated thing to untangle, but one of the things you see in Hollywood portrayals of villains, you saw this in The Silence of the Lambs, you see it frequently in mafia portrayals, is that the villain is inadvertently or even sometimes purposefully glorified. And it's partly because he's a rule breaker and has the attraction that goes along with that. But I also wonder too if it has something to do with what you were describing, is that the writers and the actors find themselves, when they're trying to portray evil, pulled towards falseness in that representation as part of the proclivity of evil to hide itself. And the danger in that is twofold. And one is the danger of deceiving the public as to the true nature of evil, because there's nothing heroic about it, quite the contrary. And the second danger I wonder about, there's all this speculation about Heath Ledger and the consequences that for him of having played the Joker in such a dark manner. And, I don't know what to make of that, although I do think there is some danger in having to journey down a path of emulating evil in order to represent it. Now, you said that you turned to God, so to speak, to protect yourself against false representations of evil, but also in some ways to shield yourself. And it sounds to me reminiscent of what Tim's superiors mentioned to him when they said to him that his faith might protect him
I love his question.
from what was... Okay, go ahead, man.
This is the best interview I've ever had in my life. I love your line of questioning and getting to what is real. My job is to give what I know to be absolutely certain and real. I hooked into Tim, has a childlike quality to him, and I stay with that innocence, and don't take that innocence as weakness. So when I read the scripture, I feel truth, good, evil, and I find the good, and let that just pierce the darkness. And it has to pierce. And I know what that light is. And I know that deception, that when I start hearing about, for example, in your life, there's two masters here. One is from the evil, wicked side, but he comes in through your ego. And the other one is the light side that tells you what you might not want to hear, but you ought to hear. And it's not manipulative. It's truth. So I go to that side, then I pray, then I go through it. Like the Passion of the Christ, I looked at the Shroud of Turin, and there were two men, Christian Tinsley and Keith Vanderlyn, who are experts in makeup. And both of these men were agnostic. And they looked at the shroud that Mel Gibson presented to them. And one particular way, the way it is through the negative, however they were able to show it, you can see the track lines of Jesus. You can see the actual bamboo sticks that they used to initially hit him. And then you see the cat of nine tails, the track lines. They look like the Grand Canyon in your skin. And it shocked them. Now, these guys look at everything from decapitations, murders, and everything. Prior to this, I did a movie a long time ago in New York, and I was with Homicide, and I got to see the contortion of a face when someone gets murdered. And it's hard to watch. But when you start going into this, which is children, there is something that I can't even fathom, even with the protection of Almighty God, because it took me 2 years to get over this. 2 years, and a friend of mine, Debbie, came into the room, and at around 3 o'clock in the middle of the night, I was in a chair, and she heard me just weeping. Now, I would go into these black holes, and I have no idea, I don't remember it, but this was all of the screaming that I had to hear. I didn't want to hear it, but I had to hear it. And then I was able to transform that into the movie that you just saw when I asked Alejandro Monteverdi to move our DP to take it and show him my eyeball so you would see a 20-foot eye to see what Tim goes through to rip his heart out. Now, it's not like this is what I want to experience any more than I want to get on a cross and have my heart broken. I went through hypothermia. I had to have open heart surgery. I was electrocuted, struck by lightning. I understand the necessity of what I was going to have to go through could help bring people back to God, to wake them up. And quite frankly, more people now, Jordan, are more afraid of the devil than they are of God, because they want a happy Jesus. And the problem is that eventually, Jordan, we all are going to die. Eventually that is going to happen. But people, the power of the devil deceives to say, no, you're going to be around for a long, long time. And they never wake up. And eventually there is a judgment, and then you have to decide, or God decides, not how you want to see yourself anymore, but how God sees you. And how God sees you is who you really are. And so that's how I chose to go at this particular case. I had no choice but to go in. And I hear the screams in my heart. I hear the screams because of the agents that I got to work with, got to show me things. And one particular time, he says, "Are you sure you want to go further?" But I was weeping so hard. I said, "This is what Tim goes through. This is what I got. I got to see it in order to go into there, to take people to a level of, will you do something? Will you do something?" At some point, it ends for all of us. And so the pain in my heart is much better than the pain in the future. And if I have to see that to save my children, to motivate me to save my niece, to tell my sister, no, walking home at 13 years old from school is not a good choice. Not a good choice. My sister says to me, no, I want my daughter, to have the same kind of experience I have. And I said, no, not until this changes. You need to understand. So Anne, my sister, is a great mother, but she wasn't aware because the media that's supposed to do a good job to tell the truth, well, they're going into that direction, which is, let's kind of twist it and change it and not talk about it.
How has this changed you? How is experiencing that material and having to play it out changed you?
I'd give my life in a heartbeat. Changed me. I'm less concerned about myself than I am about the hurt. I will tell you this right now. I would absolutely die. If this were to change the world and get rid of trafficking and pornography and all of the 8 arms of this octopus that has to be destroyed, the only way you can destroy it is take the head out. If that hit, I'd give my life for it in a heartbeat.
Jordan Peterson and Jim Caviezel, they discussed the representation and imitation of good versus evil. Jim was the actor who played Jesus in The Passion of the Christ that was released in 2004. And he was also the main character of the movie The Sound of Freedom that was released in 2023, where he played as Tim Ballard, who was a Navy SEAL. And this man, Tim Ballard, he rescued many children from child trafficking. Jim speaks of what he had to go through to experience the light of who God truly is in order to give a valid portrayal of truth. And sometimes we have to go through painful experiences in order to learn the reality of how awful things truly are in this world, in order to challenge us to fight the evils that are within. And speaking of imitation, Jim says, I don't go to the devil to play the devil. I think many actors make that mistake. Go to God to tell you who the devil is. And he's very accurate in saying this, because I hear very often many people, they want to learn evidence or truth of who Satan is. And I'm thinking to myself, you got to go to the Bible, because many times they'll allow certain things into their household, Ouija boards, witchcraft, going and watching satanic movies and going into the realm of Satan to learn who Satan is. And that's a dangerous game to play. So just like Jim says, I go to God to learn who the devil is. Because when you learn from the devil about what evil is, it can create a fascination with evil. And The Punisher is a good example, for instance, where he takes vengeance into his own hands. And this can create a fascination within the viewers as it appeals to their flesh about how good it feels and how good it looks like to take vengeance into your own hands. So when you go to the devil to learn about evil, you risk becoming fascinated with that evil. But when you go to God to learn about the devil, you aren't fascinated, you become disgusted, because you see how far this lifestyle separates you from God. And that's essentially what evil is. We have to guard our minds. As we see scientifically, we can understand there's power in what we watch and how it influences our subconscious mind below our awareness. So with that being said, it affects the way that we act and think and how we behave. And there's also grave dangers in that of the actors who are doing the portrayal of evil. As Jordan Peterson mentions the speculation behind Heath Ledger's death. Heath Ledger played the Joker in The Dark Knight that was released in 2008. Now, referring to or mentioning the power of imitation, Jordan Peterson says in this interview, the actors who are portraying evil in these films are often pulled towards falseness in that representation as part of the proclivity of evil to hide itself. This is the speculation behind Ledger's death. Just before the time of Ledger's death, he was dealing with emotional problems, insomnia, and deep anxiety before he took the role of Joker in 2008. And he also had a split the year prior in 2007 with actress Michelle Williams, who he had a daughter with. So the very next year after filming Dark Knight, he died of possible accidental overdose. Check this quick clip out pertaining to Ledger's preparation for the role of Joker.
Professionally, Heath had to turn his attention to an extremely physically and psychologically demanding role, arguably the role for which he will be most fondly remembered and admired. The role that would show us the morbidly dark side of Heath's acting talent. The role of the Joker in the Batman adventure, The Dark Knight.
I haven't done much prep yet. I'm 3 days away from working. I'm in Montreal right now doing the I'm Not There movie, Todd Haynes' movie, and so I've been thinking a lot about that. But I got a few tricks up my sleeve.
To prepare, it was reported that Heath locked himself in a London hotel room for a month and experimented with different voices and physical characterizations.
There's also speculation that during this period, Ledger was venturing into the dark side of the film industry, watching sadistic and psychopathic movies in order to better emulate and become Joker.
Whatever he did in there, it worked.
It's just been stupid amounts of fun, and you know, he's dark. Yeah, very nasty. He's a psychopath, sociopath, mass murdering clown, and it's really coming together. And the movie looks amazing. It's a lot darker than the first one, and I think a lot bigger too.
Okay, now listen. Going to the devil to learn about him is the same as going to a narcissist, a manipulator, and expecting him to tell you the truth about how you should trust him. You're going to be deceived. In 2005, Times interviewed Ledger, and in this interview, it's indicated that Ledger felt himself not to be good enough, where he quotes in this interview, "When I get cast in something, I always believe I shouldn't have been cast. I fooled them again. I can't do it. I don't know how to do it." So what we see is he lived with self-doubt and anxiety. And this self-doubt may have been what propelled him to really push in becoming the best evil Joker that he could become in order to prove himself to be wrong with what he originally feels about himself. Jack Nicholson, who played the Joker in 1989, he apparently warned Ledger about the dark side to emulating this character, as Nicholson himself would have had to study and familiarize himself with this character. With that being said, I want to show you this quick clip.
Jack, any comments on Heath Ledger's death? About what? Heath Ledger, the actor who died tonight in New York. Drug overdose. He died in New York. Just found him dead a couple hours ago. I warned him. Listen, Jack.
So we see here, Nicholson, he warned Ledger, as Nicholson would have known that this character was potentially dangerous for your mental health and not to go too far deep down this hole of trying to emulate this. And what I'm not trying to do in this video is speak bad about Ledger. Rather, I want his unfortunate death to be a warning of what we allow in our lives and to pay attention to that. And I wish the best for his family and for his daughter. And I pray this video would be encouragement for you to go to God, the Bible, when you have questions about good and evil and how to leave this world victorious. So with all that being said, with the emotional pain and torment and the anxiety, the insomnia that it seems like Ledger was already going to before he stepped into this role, I feel like it's logical to assume that it probably pushed him even further into the darkness that he was already walking in, as some people don't know how to deal with their mental health whenever things like a split up or maybe not seeing your kids as much just randomly occur, or when that type of lifestyle is taken away from you. So I feel led to believe that this dark side of studying the Joker probably played a large role, as the power of imitation is very, very powerful. But what's even more powerful is the power of Jesus Christ, because when we are imitating Jesus Christ, we're going to understand the true difference between good and evil, and how evil separates us so far from the glory of who Jesus Christ is. And something that we can learn from the New Testament as well is the Apostle Paul, he says, when you walk with Jesus, he says in 2 Corinthians 2:11, he says, "For we are not ignorant of the schemes of the enemy." So when you walk with Christ, you walk in the light. And the Bible also says that we are to be imitators of Christ. Ephesians 5:1 says, "Imitate God, therefore, in everything you do, because you are his dear children." So there's power in imitation. And the very thing that you imitate, that will be the very thing that you begin to look like. So be wise in what you do and who you follow, and let us become more like Christ.